Now joining us on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is ESPN college football analyst Trevor Matich. It's a Matich Monday. Trevor, welcome back to BYU Sports Nation.
Thanks. Hey, I'm excited for our women's volleyball team. And by the way, doesn't Princeton see themselves as the BYU of the East?
I've heard that. Yes, I have heard that.
I think it's on like a statue or something on campus there in New Jersey. Yeah,
if you look at the small print on their website, that's there.
Yeah, exactly. BYU is playing Wyoming in the Poinsettia Bowl. What was your one-word reaction when you heard that news?
Nostalgia. Nostalgia, that's an old rival with the rivalry that runs deep. Now, the people of today, the kids of today, et cetera, they don't know that, but I think institutionally, this is really fun to be able to face Wyoming once again.
What do you think of this matchup ultimately?
Well, the matchup is a good one, and it would be a quality win if BYU could pull this off. You know, we know that Wyoming played for the Mountain West Championship and lost in a close one to San Diego State, but they have got some players on offense that'll make this really interesting for fans to watch. Their quarterback, Josh Allen, is a dual threat, and he's throwing the ball very well. They have a running back who's a bulldozer in Brian Hill, a big guy. And there's only one guy in the entire nation that carried the ball more times than Hill. He's got 323 carries. He's just a gigantic workhorse. Gigantic, about 6'1", about 210, 215. He's just a big guy. And the problem is, if you try to stop Brian Hill by putting too many safeties and too many people in the box, they've got a wide receiver in Tanner Gentry, who's another big guy, about 6'2", 210, who's got one of the best yards per catch averages in the nation. He averages about 19 yards per catch. So they're very balanced on offense with the run and pass, and they've got individual stars that will be a great challenge for BYU's defense to match up with.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. There's lots of fun matchups in this one. 8-5 Wyoming, BYU coming in 8-4. Wyoming, I think they've had a quality year, and this has been kind of a resurgence. Of course, Craig Bowles, who came from North Dakota State, has kind of elevated them. And I think, Trevor, playing Wyoming and a lot of the Mountain West teams, it kind of got old. But for BYU fans, I think this has a little more intrigue because there's been a 6-year separation since playing the Cowboys. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. You don't ever want to get stale. And part of it, too, is that, especially for the fans that are there, instead of having to, go to Laramie, possibly, to see BYU play Wyoming, which is I stayed there in a little roadside motel that cost $35 a night this past July as I was coming through on my tour. So I did visit Laramie and said hello. But going to San Diego to play them, I mean, that's a joy now. That's one thing that we love so much going to the Holiday Bowl every year, was leaving the snows of Provo and spending a week on the beach in San Diego. And the fact that we're playing a team that plays at 7,000-foot elevation in Laramie, Wyoming, that's a traditional rival, I think is a whole lot of fun. So the teams the fans watching this game on TV will have a lot of good football to watch. And the fans that are there in San Diego, well, if you're not going to San Diego, change your plans and go.
You referenced the fact that Wyoming is balanced, but clearly their workhorse has been Brian Hill, and that's what this game will feature two of the nation's best running backs in Hill and obviously Jamal Williams. Is it oversimplifying things to say that the team that can slow down the other team's rushing attack will win?
I think it's important, and that will be the first priority of both defenses, to slow down the other side's rushing attack. The problem is that if you can't do that with normal personnel in the box, then you're exposed to some very good receivers going over the top. And Tanner Mangum has shown that when he wants to launch that ball deep, he can complete it. And so both sides have the ability to burn you if you devote too many resources to stopping that running game. And really, a lot of this game will come down to which team can slow down the other one's running back and still play good pass protection behind it.
Taysom Hill's out. He's not playing in the bowl game with the left elbow sprain. Tanner Mangum will start the bowl game. He played in a bowl game last year, in fact. He's on a 28-0 run. If you're a BYU fan, that's how you count that. What do you expect from Tanner Mangum in the Poinsettia Bowl?
I expect him to throw the ball deep early and often. I think this is a lot of fun. And I think that BYU, to win this game, the best thing they can do is establish play action, because Wyoming's defense will have their hands full. I mean, they see him practice every day, a terrific running back in Brian Hill, but Jamal Williams, one of the best backs in the nation. And that's going to open up play action pass, and that's really where Tanner Mangum excels. He doesn't want to have to run around like Taysom Hill and avoid the pass rush. And the best way to slow down a pass rush is to have a big offensive line hit him in the mouth and have a running back come downhill at them and have the defense try to figure out if that back has the ball or not. And Jamal Williams is the perfect play-action guy. So that's one of the reasons I think BYU will start to push that ball down the field.
All 4 of your bowl games were actually in San Diego. You have any good stories or two from the glory days in San Diego?
Well, I'll tell you what, the glory days of San Diego were mostly just laying on the beach and trying not to get sunburned. Because that's one thing that happens, whether it's playing at Hawaii or going to San Diego in December. You've always got some of the young guys on the team that don't understand the relationship between pain and sunburn. Because, you can go out there with your unaccustomed skin, unaccustomed to the sun, and it doesn't hurt for a while. So you think you can stay out on the beach for longer than you should. It doesn't start to hurt until later. But then when equipment managers start to pull on your jerseys, in other words, what they'll do is they'll put the jersey on the shoulder pads, and they're really tight, and then they'll pull the shoulder pads with the jersey over your skin and just scrape hard against the skin. And I'll tell you what, it's always fun as an older guy just to look at those guys and say, I told you so, I told you so. And they got to go out and play the game. So it's always fun to look at that difference. I'll tell you this, though. At Wyoming, I remember my freshman year, we played out there. It was a snowstorm, a raging snowstorm. The game was on ABC. Mark Wilson was the quarterback. And by the end of the game, you couldn't see across the field. You couldn't see the other sideline because the snow was blowing so hard. And Wilson set NCAA passing records in that game. And the only people left in the stands at the end were all a combination of shirtless. Well, the men were shirtless, and they were completely inebriated off their gourd. And I was told by the older guys, it was my freshman year, to keep my helmet on, and things were pinging off our helmets like coins and things like that the entire game. And at halftime, our offensive line coach, Roger French, because we were trailing in that game. No, that wasn't Roger. This was before that. But in another memory of Wyoming is that one of the halftimes, our offensive line coach, Roger French, was so worried that they had bugged the locker room that he took a pair of scissors and cut an electrical cord that came to a speaker where we were meeting at halftime. So there's no trust gained and no love lost between these programs.
Absolutely. It's going to be a ton of fun coming up December 21st. Tickets available on BYUtickets.com. Trevor Matich of ESPN is on BYU Sports Nation. The college football playoff is out. We know the 4 teams. What did you think of Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Washington?
Well, I think they got 3 or 4. I think that I would have put in Penn State as the 4th team.
Over Washington?
Over Ohio State.
Okay.
And the reason is that I think the committee was faithful to their standards, but I think they had the wrong standards. The written standard says that a non-champion must be unequivocally better, their word, unequivocally better, in order to go to the playoff above a conference champion. And that's a high bar to overcome. But their stated standard is completely different. Their stated standard is that conference championship and head-to-head are mildly interesting exhibitions that will be used as last-ditch tiebreakers only if they can't separate the teams by other means that the committee thinks are more important than conference championship and head-to-head. And that really bothers me. And this has nothing to do with Ohio State. Ohio State fans are mad at me for saying this. This is about the big picture of what college football should value. Now, in a 14 playoff, conference championship is not absolute. But I advocate for the written standard, not the stated standard. And so when you look at Penn State versus Ohio State at the end of it all, they are close in their overall resume, but Ohio State has the advantage. Ohio State had one less loss, 2-1, and they had one more win than Penn State did over teams ranked in the top 10, 3-2. And that's an advantage for Ohio State. But on the Penn State side of the ledger, you had a head-to-head win. Penn State beat Ohio State. Penn State won the division that Ohio State is in, and Penn State won the conference that Ohio State is in. And what the committee said was that the resume of Ohio State should trump head-to-head and conference championship, and I think that's backwards. I think what they should have done is say that the conference championship and head-to-head represent a high bar that Ohio State's resume had to overcome, and I don't think there's any way that you can say that Ohio State is unequivocally better than Penn State, given the fact that Penn State is close to them in overall resume, and Penn State beat them on the field. Maybe Ohio State's better, but not unequivocally better. And so I think that it was unfair to college football and to conference races around the country. And I think that it's a problem going forward if they keep it this way, because the way the committee talks, they think that college football should be one giant 128-team bucket where they'll skim off the top 4 teams regardless of what happens in conference championships for the most part. And to me, that would marginalize conference championships and make them what they were even before the BCS. Make them regional races of regional interest, because nationally they won't come into play according to the committee unless you need a last-ditch tiebreaker. And I think that's not good for college football. So independent of which teams were involved, I don't like the way that the committee came to include Ohio State but not Penn State. Now, if they wanted to include Ohio State instead of Washington, I think there's a good argument there, because there's no head-to-head. And Ohio State does have a clearly better resume than Washington. I still would have taken Washington. But in this case, I'm not happy with the process by which they found their top 4 teams, even though I know that based on the standards that they set, they were faithful to those standards. They're just the wrong standards.
Opinionated as always. It's going to be a fun bowl season. Even though Penn State didn't make it, the Rose Bowl should be a lot of fun. Lots of great bowl games, including BYU and Wyoming. Trevor, we appreciate the time.
All right. Thanks, guys.